Story 1, The House I Don't Remember, But That Remembers Me. I've never lived there, never even been there in real life. But somehow, that house knows me better than anyone. It started as a strange feeling, a whisper at the edge of my mind, a shadow that followed me even after I woke up. Every time I closed my eyes, no matter how tired or distracted, I found myself standing in front of an old white picket fence. Behind it stood a house, not grand or fancy, but familiar in a way I couldn't explain. The paint was peeling, the windows were cracked, and the garden was overgrown with wildflowers and moss. The front door was made of dark oak, and it creaked softly when it opened, as if it had been waiting for me all along. When I stepped inside, everything was silent, but the silence wasn't empty. It was full of memories I didn't have. The worn-out armchair in the living room was tilted just a little to the left, as if someone had just stood up. The kitchen smelled faintly of cinnamon and old wood, and there was always a kettle on the stove, gently steaming, but never boiling. Upstairs, the attic door was always closed, and though I felt drawn to open it, I never quite had the courage. The air around it was cold and heavy, like a secret that had been locked away for decades. In the house, time seemed different. Clocks ticked in slow motion, and sunlight through the windows cast shadows that danced like ghosts. But what was most unsettling was a feeling that I wasn't alone. Something watched me, something patient and ancient. One night, I found a photo hidden in a drawer beneath a cracked mirror. In it, I was sitting on the steps of the porch with a dog I'd never seen before. Next to me stood a woman, her eyes soft but knowing, as if she held the answers to questions I hadn't yet thought to ask. When I woke up that morning, I had a faint red mark on my hand, exactly where the brass doorknob of the attic door always was. But in real life, that house didn't exist. It was nowhere on any map, and I had never stepped foot inside it. Sometimes I wonder if the house is real, or if it's a place I visit in a dream that's older than me. But I know one thing for sure. It remembers me, and it's waiting. Story 2, The Train That Wasn't Mine. It wasn't my train, but somehow, it took me anyway. I was 14, heading home after a summer camp. The day had been long and exhausting, and all I wanted was to get back to my room and sleep. I climbed aboard the train and found an empty seat by the window. The soft hum of the engine and the rhythmic clack of the wheels soon lulled me into a deep sleep. But when I opened my eyes again, the world had changed. The carriage I was in wasn't the one I'd boarded. It looked older. The seats were worn leather, the wood-paneled walls carried the faint scent of lavender and dust. The lighting was dim, flickering occasionally. Outside the window, the landscape was a thick, swirling fog. I was alone. No other campers, no chatter or laughter, just silence, thick and heavy. As I walked down the aisle, I noticed small details that sent shivers down my spine. The reflection in the window wasn't mine. Instead, it was a faded, blurry image of someone else. Someone I didn't recognize, but felt oddly connected to. The old grandfather clock near the door ticked backward, slow and deliberate, as if time itself was rewinding. The compartments were filled with people who seemed trapped between worlds. One woman sat reading a book upside down, her eyes never leaving the pages. A man stared blankly out the window into the mist, unmoving, as if waiting for something that would never come. Another passenger, a little girl with tangled hair and bare feet, whispered my name, though I couldn't see her clearly. I felt a chill run down my spine when I spotted the conductor, the only person who looked normal. He wore a worn-out uniform, his eyes dark but kind. He approached me with a soft smile and said in a low voice, "It's not your time yet, but you can take a look." Before I could ask what he meant, the train jolted and swayed, and the lights flickered. Suddenly, I was back in my original carriage. The noise of other campers, the chatter, the smell of fresh snacks filled the air. Everything was normal, or as normal as it could be. But ever since then, whenever I fall asleep while traveling, I catch a glimpse of that fog outside the window. I see those strange passengers, the backward clock, and sometimes hear the distant call of the conductor. And sometimes I feel like the train is calling me back, waiting for when it's finally my time. Story 3, Grandpa called me 5 years after he died. The phone rang at 12:03 a.m. No number. Just one word. Grandpa. It was a night like any other. The kind of quiet night when the world feels paused, and even the air seems heavier than usual. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone, half distracted and half tired, when suddenly the screen lit up with an incoming call. No number. Just one word, flashing on the screen. Grandpa. For a moment I stared, frozen. Grandpa had passed away 5 years ago. 5 years. Long enough to get used to the silence his absence left behind. Long enough to stop expecting him to call. Long enough to accept that I'd never hear his voice again. But there it was. Grandpa. Calling me. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the answer button. What if it was some prank? Some glitch? But curiosity won. I pressed accept. There was silence at first. Then a soft breath. Then his voice, faint, fragile, but unmistakable. Put the kettle on, he said quietly. Sit down. I don't have long. His voice was the same, yet different, like a whisper through the walls of time. He began to tell me stories. Stories I hadn't heard in years. Stories that felt like they had been waiting inside me, buried beneath memories and dust. He told me about the day I was scared to grow up, how he held my hand and told me it was okay to be afraid, but not to let fear rule my life. He spoke about life as a kind of dreaming, a long, winding dream where every moment is both real and unreal. Growing up doesn't hurt, he said softly. It's just moving into a different dream. His words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I could almost smell his old cologne, the one he always wore on Sundays. The faint creak of his worn leather chair seemed to echo from somewhere in the room. We talked about places I had never been to, but somehow knew. A hidden garden behind an old church, a forest path lined with silver birch trees, and a small wooden bench at sunset. He said he would always be waiting there for me, whenever I needed to rest. His stories drifted between the past and the present, blending memories with whispers of what might come. He told me about his own childhood, laughter in sunlit fields, the ache of goodbyes, the beauty of simple moments. He talked about death not as an end, but as a door. We're all just stories, he said, and sometimes those stories reach beyond the pages. Time slipped away. The clock on my wall ticked steadily, but it felt like hours passed in minutes. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the call ended. I stared at my phone. There was no record of the call, no missed calls, no answer logs, nothing. But my wallpaper had changed. On my screen was a new photo, a bench at sunset, the very same bench he had described. Since that night, I've never feared growing older. Sometimes, just before I drift off to sleep, I feel the weight of that bench beneath me, and I know he's still there, watching, waiting, quietly telling me it's okay to dream.
Story 4. The Old House at the End of Maple Street. I always thought the old house at the end of Maple Street was just another forgotten relic of the past. Abandoned for years, its paint peeling, windows dusty and cracked, it seemed like no one had stepped inside for decades. Kids in the neighborhood told stories. Some said it was haunted. Others claimed it hid secrets no one dared uncover. I never believed any of it. Not really. That summer, though, everything changed. I was 16, restless and bored on a hot July evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, and I was riding my bike past that old house, the one everyone avoided. That's when I noticed something strange. A soft, flickering light coming from one of the upper windows. I stopped my bike abruptly, heart pounding in my chest. There hadn't been electricity in that house for years. No one had lived there since old Mr. Hargrove died, and even he had left long before. The light looked like a candle flame, glowing gently in the dusk. Curiosity mixed with a hint of fear, but I knew I had to find out what was going on. Pushing open the rusty gate, I entered the overgrown garden. The weeds brushed against my legs, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and wild flowers gone wild. The old swings creaked in the breeze, the sound eerie in the quiet evening. I walked up the cracked stone path to the front door, which was slightly open.
as if inviting me in. Inside, the house was a time capsule. Dust covering every surface, cobwebs hanging like curtains, and the smell of old wood and forgotten years lingering in the air. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet as I moved cautiously through the darkened rooms. Shadows stretched across peeling wallpaper, and the faint light from the candle upstairs guided me like a beacon. When I reached the second floor, I found the room with the flickering candle on a small wooden table. Around it lay dozens of old letters, yellowed and fragile. My hands trembled slightly as I picked one up. The letter was addressed to Eleanor, dated over 50 years ago. The handwriting was elegant, flowing, but hurried in places. I read the words aloud softly. My dearest Eleanor, I write to you from a place far away, where the days are long and the nights colder than I imagined, but thoughts of you keep me warm. I promise I will come back to you. Wait for me. A sudden chill swept through the room, and the curtains fluttered, though no window was open. I heard a whisper, barely audible. Wait for me. I spun around, but saw nothing but empty walls and fading light. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was alive with stories. Stories of love and loss, hope and waiting. I returned every evening after that, uncovering more letters, piecing together Eleanor's story and the man who wrote to her. Each letter revealed fragments of a life interrupted by war, dreams deferred, and a love that transcended time. The house, I realized, wasn't haunted by ghosts, but by memories reaching out to be remembered. And in those quiet moments between the pages of forgotten letters, I learned that sometimes the past never truly leaves us. It waits patiently for someone to listen. Story 5. The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret. For as long as I can remember, the old lighthouse perched on the rugged cliff above our small coastal town has stood as a silent guardian over the restless sea. Its white paint, now chipped and faded from decades of harsh salt winds and pounding storms, has seen generations pass without fail. The lighthouse, with its towering silhouette and unwavering beam, was more than just a beacon for ships. It was a symbol of hope, safety, and mystery. No one had lived there for years, not since Elias, the last keeper, vanished without a trace in the late 1940s. Stories about him and the lighthouse filled the town's whispers. Tales of madness, strange lights dancing across the ocean waves, and voices heard in the wind. As a child, I was both fascinated and frightened by these stories, but I never dared to venture near. That all changed one summer when I was 16. It was a late August afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs low, spreading a warm, golden glow across the sea and cliffs. The breeze was salty and cool, tangling my hair as I walked along the narrow path that edged the cliffside. The lighthouse stood looming above me, its heavy iron door cracked open just a sliver, creaking softly as the wind pushed against it. There was something pulling me toward it, a curious whisper that I couldn't ignore. Stepping inside, the air was thick with the scent of old oil lamps, damp stone, and time itself. The spiral staircase wound upward into darkness, each step echoing quietly in the stillness. As I ascended, the beam of fading sunlight filtered through dusty windows, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. On the second floor, I discovered a small room cluttered with relics of the past, journals, maps, a strange collection of seashells, and a worn wooden desk. Atop it lay a large, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but carefully preserved. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it and began to read. June 14th, 1947. The sea has been restless lately. Strange lights flicker beneath the waves at night. I fear something is coming, something not of this world. The fog creeps in thicker each evening, swallowing the coast whole, and the wind carries voices that I cannot explain. The journal belonged to Elias, the last lighthouse keeper. His words were filled with growing unease, but also a deep reverence for the sea. As I turned each page, His entries became darker, more urgent. He wrote of shadows moving just beyond the reach of the lighthouse's beam, shadows that whispered secrets he could barely comprehend. One night, he described a strange figure emerging from the sea, a woman with hair like drifting seaweed, eyes glowing like lanterns deep beneath the water's surface. She spoke without words, her presence both terrifying and beautiful. She tells me secrets of the deep, Elias wrote, of ancient things sleeping beneath the waves, creatures older than time itself. She warns me that the lighthouse must never go dark, that the safety of the town depends on the light staying alive. His entries told of fierce storms unlike any before, storms that threatened to swallow the entire town if the light failed. His handwriting grew frantic, sometimes barely legible, and then his final entry, scratched hurriedly on a loose piece of paper. If you find this journal, remember, the light must never go out. For the sea remembers, the sea waits. A chill ran down my spine as I looked out the window. The sun was sinking below the horizon, painting the sky with bruised purples and fiery oranges. Below, the waves crashed violently against the jagged rocks. The lighthouse lamp stood unlit, but I felt an urgent pull to keep it burning. From that day on, I visited the lighthouse every evening, lighting the lamp at dusk. I watched the horizon, feeling a deep connection to Elias and the mysterious figure he described. The townspeople noticed the calmer seas and softer storms, but no one knew why. Sometimes when the fog rolls in thick and heavy, and the world outside feels distant and unreal, I swear I see a silhouette standing at the water's edge, a woman with hair flowing like seaweed, glowing eyes fixed on the lighthouse. She watches silently, waiting. The lighthouse keeper's secret isn't just a legend or a ghost story. It's a warning and a promise. As long as the light shines, the town sleeps safely beneath the stars, and sometimes, in the quiet moments just before dawn, I hear her whisper on the breeze, "Thank you." Story 6. The Man Who Bought the Abandoned Town. I never expected to inherit anything from my uncle. He was a recluse, one of those distant relatives that exist only in the footnotes of family stories. I had seen him maybe twice in my entire life. He lived far up north, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and everyone said he'd lost his mind after the incident back in the 80s. No one ever talked about what that incident was, so when the letter came saying he had passed away and left something for me, I thought it was a mistake. But inside the envelope was a key, a crude, hand-drawn map, and a note written in shaky handwriting. Don't let the lights go out. Ever. At first, I assumed it was a joke or some elaborate prank, but curiosity got the better of me. I had nothing tying me down, no job at the moment, no partner, no place I couldn't leave. So I packed a bag and drove north for nearly 12 hours, following the old map through forests and endless back roads, until I reached the edge of what could only be described as a forgotten town. The name had long worn off the sign, but there it stood, a small town, completely empty, frozen in time. A main street with rusted lamp posts, shuttered stores, an old diner with cracked windows, and rows of wooden houses covered in moss and ivy. At the top of the hill sat a large manor house, my uncle's place, apparently. The town was silent, no birds, no wind, not even the sound of insects. It was as if nature itself had paused, holding its breath. I unlocked the manor door with the key. The inside was dusty, but strangely intact. Furniture was covered with sheets, books lined the shelves, and an oil lantern flickered faintly in the hallway, lit somehow, though I had no idea how. On the kitchen table lay another note, in the same shaky writing. Welcome. You're the caretaker now. The town is yours, but it must never sleep in darkness. They remember, they return. I thought maybe this was some kind of escape room stunt or that my uncle had suffered from severe paranoia, but the town had power. Not modern electricity, but some kind of generator system. Each lamppost along the street had a manual switch. The houses had strange light fixtures that buzzed faintly when turned on. I stayed the night in the manor. I'll admit, it was unsettling. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window felt amplified in that silence. But nothing happened. At least not yet. The next evening, around dusk, I walked down the street and began turning on the lights, one by one. As I did, I noticed the air getting colder, heavier. The sun dipped low, and for the briefest moment, I thought I saw a figure at the end of the road, tall, still, and completely black, like a shadow without a source. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't sleep well that night. The next few days followed the same pattern. During the day, I explored the houses. Some had furniture, clothes still in closets, even food cans in pantries, all decades old. It was like everyone had just left. There were photos on walls, smiling families, children, but no names, no signs of struggle, no blood, no notes, just absence. Each evening, I'd light the town, and each night, I'd feel them watching. By the end of the first week, I found the journal. It was hidden under a floorboard in the attic of the manor. My uncle had written it over several years, documenting his time as the town's keeper. He talked about the town's history, how it was built in the 1920s around a silver mine that dried up by the 1950s. One by one, families moved away, until something happened in 1986. Something that made everyone leave overnight. He wrote of shapes in the fog, of faces pressed against glass, and dreams that bled into reality. He claimed that the town had become an anchor point for something ancient, something buried deep in the earth under the mine, the town's power grid, the lighting system. It wasn't just for comfort, it was containment. When the lights go out, he wrote, they wake up, they remember, and they try to come back. I wanted to leave. I really did. But some part of me, fear, maybe guilt, or just that human need to understand the unknowable, kept me there. Every evening, like clockwork, I lit the lights, and the town stayed quiet. Until last night. There was a storm, the worst I'd seen. Wind howling like a living thing, rain pouring in sheets, lightning splitting the sky, power flickered, and then went out for exactly 3 minutes. I ran through the streets in the darkness, lantern in hand, trying to restart the generator. I heard footsteps, not mine. Heavy, wet footsteps following me, whispering, breathing. A low humming sound like voices underwater. When the lights finally flickered back on, there were handprints, dozens of them, wet, black, smeared across windows, doors, even on the hood of my truck. And down at the end of the street, I saw them. 5 tall figures, perfectly still, watching. They didn't move, not even when I stared for a full minute. But they were closer than before. I don't know what they are. Spirits, creatures, shadows from another reality. I only know one thing now for certain. If the lights go out again for too long, I don't think they'll just stand there. I'm writing this in case something happens to me, in case I fail. The lights are still on. The generator is holding, and I can feel them getting braver. And the nights are getting longer. Story 7. The hotel room that doesn't exist. I travel a lot for work. Always have. Conferences, meetings, product launches in cities I barely remember. After a while, every hotel starts to feel the same. The beige carpets, that faint smell of cleaning chemicals mixed with cheap air freshener, the buzz of fluorescent lights in the hallway. I've become numb to it all. But there's one trip I can't forget, no matter how hard I try, because I stayed in a hotel room that isn't supposed to exist. This happened in 2019 in a mid-sized city in northern Michigan. I won't say the name for reasons that will become obvious. It was February, bitterly cold. I arrived late after a delayed flight, dragging my suitcase through snow and slush. The hotel was an old brick building, historic according to the plaque near the entrance. Something about it used to be a sanitarium in the 1920s. Most of it had been renovated, though parts still creaked and groaned, like they remembered every soul who passed through. I checked in at the front desk. The clerk looked half asleep, maybe 19 years old at most. He barely glanced at me before handing me a key card and saying, "Room 604. I blinked. 604? I thought this place only had 5 floors. He shrugged. New section. Elevator on the left. You'll need to scan your key card to get access. I didn't ask more. I was exhausted, and honestly, it didn't register as that strange at the time. I found the elevator, scanned my card, and sure enough, the digital display blinked and showed a 6th floor option. I pressed it. The elevator jerked slightly and began its ascent. It passed the fifth floor with a soft chime, then kept going. But instead of a ding, the elevator light flickered. Just once, not enough to be alarming yet. When the doors opened, I stepped out into silence. The hallway was darker than the other floors. The lights were dim, the wallpaper faded and peeling slightly at the corners. It smelled off, like something stale had been sealed in too long. Still, I found my room, 604, at the end of the hallway. The door was heavy, old, not like the modern ones downstairs. It had a brass handle and an actual keyhole, despite me holding a plastic keycard. I tapped the card against the sensor. Nothing. I tried the handle anyway. It clicked open. Inside, the room looked nothing like the pictures online. The decor was vintage, 1960s maybe, floral curtains, heavy velvet armchair, a rotary phone on the desk. The TV was a boxy old thing with knobs, though when I turned it on, it hummed to life with static. There were no modern amenities, no outlets, no Wi-Fi info, not even a thermostat. The bed, though, was made. Sheets crisp and clean, and honestly, I was too tired to care. I kicked off my shoes, got under the covers, and was asleep in minutes. But sometime in the night, I woke up.